Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm your host, Mike Calabrese, and I am joined by Action Network's expert on the College Diamond. That's Collin Wilson. And the long wait is over, Collin. We have the bracket in our hands. The greatest show on dirt is going to kick off on Friday. The NCAA tournament, the road to Omaha. It's all here. With the bracket in hand, is this Christmas morning for you, or do you have to wait for that first pitch to hit the mitt and then the blood really starts flowing?
Listen, can we cut out college football? Because I think the day they announce the bowls is really Christmas Day. So if we set that aside, yes, this is Christmas Day. The field of 64 has been released. We know who's been snubbed. Let me get some homerism, some fanism out of the way since I'm a two-time graduate of the University of Arkansas. Woo Pig Suey, great regional. I have no fears. Holy shit, Tennessee and Tony Vitello might come to us to the Supers. My head might explode next weekend. We'll see if we both survive.
You asked for Kansas. You got Kansas. You got everything that your heart desired, Collin.
Yes.
Just real quick, we're going to talk about so many things in this episode, but talk me through the matchup against KU. That's ideal as your 2 seed there.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because there is no pitching coming to Fayetteville. And I think the worry is you don't want someone to come in and try to slow down what is probably the most potent offense in the nation. You get Kansas coming in with a 5.9 xFIP. They have a 5 ERA. Look, they can hit too, but they've been in these balmy ballparks in the Big 12 where it's kind of like Big 12 football. It's kind of defense optional, and we're just going to score 50-50 and see if we go to 3 overtimes. It's kind of what Kansas baseball has been all season. I am not worried about their offense. They do have gaudy numbers, but with an 86 strength of schedule, I'm not really worried about them. But we can talk a little bit of Fayetteville Regional later.
Now, if you're listening in and you don't have your hands on the bracket yet, or this is a little bit early in the schedule for you, we're going to walk you through exactly what happened in terms of the top 8 seeds, aka the super regional seeds. They are as follows: Vanderbilt, Texas, Arkansas, Auburn, North Carolina, LSU, Georgia, and Oregon State. That means 6 SEC teams, a single team out of the ACC, and 1 independent in Oregon State choosing to play that independent schedule and not have any conference affiliation. Right off the bat, my thought is, yes, Vandy gets the number 1 seed. They ride the momentum of winning the SEC conference tournament. Congrats to them and all the work they did down in Hoover. But despite that, they don't exactly have the easiest road, in my opinion, because a 3 seed is lurking in their regional. I'm talking about ETSU. They're 4th in slugging in the entire country. And we know this is a Vanderbilt team with a tremendous staff. All the fundamentals point to them potentially being the best or one of the top 3 best staffs in this entire field. But on the other side of the coin, you look at it in terms of their offense. They need to manufacture runs because they don't belt the ball out of the ballpark. So if they do get through ETSU, and assuming that matchup is on the horizon for them, should they advance, they're going to catch a Southern Miss team that we've been pumping their tires the last couple episodes. If they get them in the Supers, there's a lot to love about the Golden Eagles. We actually discussed them as potentially being closer to an SEC contender in terms of how they profile than some cute Sunbelt story. So what do you think about Vandy? Do you actually like their regional path, or do you think it's a team that could trip up in the Supers against a team like USM?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of numbers here, so let's get it out of the way. So I project a minus 235. They're minus 270 out there in the market, so it's pretty close to what you have. But we've talked about this all season long. Vanderbilt is a pitching and defense team. We said that when they get into regionals, they need to avoid big sticks, big barrels, teams that can throw up a lot of runs. Let's look at ETSU, 3rd in the nation in homers per 9, 4th in the nation in slugging. These are the kind of bats that they wanted to avoid. I think the one thing that would also scare me about ETSU, 23rd in the nation in road RPI. These guys have played on the road. Let's look at their resume here. They took a short loss to Georgia on the road. They had a victory at Tennessee during the month of March. I know it was a couple months ago, but these are the big boys in the SEC. They hung with Georgia. They beat Tennessee. Cooper Torres is the guy that you're going to need to know here. I still project Vanderbilt minus 170 in the game, especially if they have their star J.D. Thompson going. But, we don't know right now. It's too early. This is Monday night. We don't know if they're going to save game 1 starters for game 2 to put them up against the better team. If they're going to throw maybe a scrap heap out there in the first game against the 4 seed, we will see. But Vanderbilt, I make about minus 170 overall for the region, minus 230. I think there's opportunity here to buy ETSU or at least buy an over. Don't sleep on the Buccaneers.
I wrote it up this morning. It's going to be in Tuesday morning's New York Post. I like LSU at 7-1 to win the College World Series, and a big part of it was I wanted to see them get an ideal path, particularly in the regionals, so they don't have to break a sweat there at Alex Box. And they have a cakewalk, in my opinion. Little Rock does not have the offense to keep up. And Dallas Baptist and Rhode Island, they have nice aces, but the rest of their rotation, particularly when you get into their bullpen as well, they can get exposed. You saw it when Dallas Baptist hosted LSU earlier this season. Ryan Borberg acquitted himself really nicely, but he only pitched 4 innings. And that's generally what you're going to get out of him. Once they got into that Patriot bullpen, LSU feasted. They won 7-3 on the road. So I like that matchup. Same thing with Rhode Island. I think if they can get past their starters, there's going to be some crooked numbers in the later innings in those games. What do you think about LSU overall, not just for the regionals, which I think we can agree is pretty cushy, but after that, their path to Omaha and then what they can do in Omaha in that cavernous stadium?
Yeah, so zero thought to my tweet earlier today. The second LSU was announced and who was in the regional. I think I tweeted LSU to the Supers minus 9999999. I now have done the numbers. I project LSU minus 425. Last I looked at the market, we recorded minus 390 out there in the market. And really what you're looking at with Dallas Baptist is you're looking at a team that has a similar strength of schedule, similar offensive numbers to LSU, actually strength of schedule, right there at the same. So you kind of do count their offensive numbers to be the same. But when it comes to the pitching, it is just a huge stark contrast out there. So Dallas Baptist is going to have to play their best ball this season. They're going to have to throw their best of the season. And when you've got Cade Anderson, who I think is going to be okay, he kind of shortchanged it in the SEC tournament, but Anthony Ianson is still there. He only got 2 innings in the SEC tournament. They're going to be completely fresh as a pitching staff. That is above and beyond what anything Dallas Baptist has that they can throw. So I do like LSU, and I still think there's value by about 30, 40 cents in the market on them. Once you get past that, I mean, I'm glad that we talked about LSU in the futures market. I don't think that they're going to have an issue right now. If you can go out there and get a number on LSU to make the College World Series, I still think it's a good number. I just don't see a path. I'm glad it fell for us, especially we're going to talk about the Clemson Regional. It could be a free-for-all. I think there's a little mispricing in the market, so we'll talk about that one later. But I don't fear Kentucky, West Virginia. I definitely don't fear West Virginia. I don't ever fear anybody for the Big 12, and I don't fear Clemson whatsoever.
Yeah, it's interesting with LSU's rotation. You mentioned the top 2 guys, Cade Anderson in particular. When he's absolutely feeling it and his breaking stuff is on point, he looks like a junior version of Max Fried from the New York Yankees as a lefty, as someone who can strike out a lot of batters. And that's what's going to be required should they get to Omaha. It's not enough to have one super ace. You have to be able to throw 2 guys up there that you can count on to win low-scoring games. And he's someone who can go deep into games and strike out double-digit players, or batters, I should say. All right, let's get into the next one in terms of an ideal road out of the regional. We like Georgia here because they should be able to bomb their way through Binghamton. Shout out to a SUNY school, Duke, and Oklahoma State. And you mentioned some interesting under-the-hood stats about Duke's pitching staff that make them an ideal candidate to get run off the diamond against the Bulldogs.
Well, first off, Binghamton 0-5 against quad 1, quad 2 play. It was nice to show up. Strength of schedule 255th. This is going to be bad. I don't if you can find a team total on Georgia over the first game, might be a good one to take. So I wanted to consider Duke here because what you do with these regionals is they're going to be overpriced, right? If you think tariffs and if you think inflation is bad, some of these numbers on these regional hosts are pretty bad too. And with the idea of Georgia is you kind of want to go in, look at Duke and Oklahoma State and say, where can I shoot holes in this product? Well, with Duke, I mean, they're excellent at fielding. They're top 30 in fielding. They're homers per 9, top 15, on base, top 15. And then you look at some of their pitching. But as I started to do a little bit more research, you ask yourself, what is it I have to do to beat Georgia? Well, they're number 1 in the nation in homers per 9. The bombs absolutely fly, and they're playing in their home park. And you would think that the Duke of the past, with the pitching that they have, would bring the pedigree that would be able to stop a lot of this Georgia bombs that are happening. But if you do a little bit of research, there are 307 teams in Division I baseball. Duke is 290th in home run to fly ball rate. That is not an anomaly. Everything that goes up in the air goes out of the park. It's something like 17%. It is horrible, and that is not going to fly against Georgia. I do actually price this as if Georgia is too much. I make it Georgia minus 225. I see minus 310 in the market. Not sure what you want to do with that, but with a stat where the home run fly ball rate is so bad for Duke, I don't know if you just lay that or you play it game to game, but there's no way there's any other decision besides Georgia here.
We'll close this out. Oregon didn't capture their super regional seed as planned. They flame out early in pool play of the Big Ten tournament against Nebraska, but they do get Arizona, Cal Poly, and Utah Valley awaiting them in the gorgeous home diamond in Eugene. Maybe they get lucky on the other side of this and Nebraska or Oklahoma upsets North Carolina and they get to play in Eugene all the way until Omaha. But I guess you can make the argument in Nebraska, the Cornhuskers have really acquitted themselves well against top competition, including knocking off that same exact Duck team, as I mentioned in the conference tournament. What do you think the odds are of an upset on that UNC side? And if so, does this Oregon road all of a sudden look really good again?
I like them in the regionals. I do. I think it's a completely mispriced in the market. Oregon minus 210 as we were recording this. I make it minus 290. I've got them at about minus 170, minus 230, and minus 200 in the three projected games that they would play. Arizona has completely flamed out here at the end of the season. I mean, if they would have played another 2 or 3 weeks of regular season, Arizona might not even have made the damn tournament. So I don't see any resistance here in the regionals. But you're about to run into the hottest team, which I think in the nation, maybe a team that North Carolina, that I absolutely believe can hang with any SEC team out there. And Oregon's going to have to go cross country, play on the East Coast. We don't know what the weather's going to be yet in Oregon. We don't know if it's one of those things where they could get delayed a day, but then it's going to take them a whole day to travel to the other coast and play. I don't think it's a gratuitous path, especially if they're playing North Carolina. Not sure if I see North Carolina getting knocked out either. So I do like Oregon in the regionals. I think it's a good price at minus 210, but that might be the end of the road for the Ducks. And man, you and I talked about it all year. Is Oregon State or Oregon going to get the 8-9 seed? Who's going to benefit from that? Even though Oregon swept Oregon State, they kind of got screwed here. And this path going to North Carolina is not a good path for them whatsoever.
All right, we talked about some of the cakewalk regionals. Let's talk about the nightmare draws. Coastal, congrats. What a great season. You got to compete with Florida as your 2 seed in your regional. That seems unfair to me for a team with an RPI of 8th in the country, but you can't count out Kevin Schnall, what he's been able to accomplish right away in his debut season in Conway. But still, that's yeoman's work right out of the chute for a team that was hoping to have some tin cans there in their region.
Yeah, and you knew the committee was going to do this, right? Somebody was going to have to deal with Florida. Somebody was going to have to get a 2 seed in Florida, a team that was not going to be in the tournament a month ago, a team that kind of blew their way through a lot of SEC strongholds and worked their way all the way up to a 2. And now what you see is Coastal Carolina, and I see lines bouncing around for Florida that are favorites on everybody not named Coastal, and there's only one pitcher that would be a favorite for Coastal over Florida. The other lines would be about minus 115 in the favor of Florida. I make this a 55% price for Coastal. That puts them at about a minus 115 to a minus 120. Florida's hanging around out there at Florida plus 115. I think the best thing you can do with this region, so I do show just minimal value, maybe dime to a 20 cents value on Florida. I think the best thing you do is you take the dog here in the SEC team. It will not be a dog by the time they get to first pitch. By the time this region kicks off, everybody's going to flood in on Florida and say, who the hell is this Coastal Carolina team? I would get the plus money on Florida. The second it flips to them being a favorite for the regional, I would stop and maybe switch around and get Coastal and try to go the other way. So this is definitely a hedge and live play type scenario. I just see more money coming in on Florida by the end of the week that kind of flips these numbers.
The red nuclear phone is ringing here in my office. We have a gambling emergency. UCLA drawing UC Irvine, a team that spent a portion of the season inside of the top 10, and you can get a decent price on the Anteaters. Walk me through what is going on, what sports books are missing there.
I don't know why they put this. I think there are, I don't know, I don't want to offend some people I know that listen to this. I think some odds makers are putting up numbers just based on the regional seeding. If you'd like to know, UC Irvine was in contention to be a super regional seed as of just a couple of weeks ago. Now, all of a sudden, they're coming in here as a 2 seed. I would make UC Irvine favored over UCLA in every single pitching matchup you could put together. You want to go a little bit farther? The number 3 seed would be within 10 to 20 cents of a pick'em every game against UC Irvine. So what we have here is a series price that I literally make at about like 48% for Arizona State, a little bit lower for UC Irvine, and I don't give UCLA a shot at all here. I think Arizona State plus 360 out there, that's a joke. I mean, they should be more around plus 120. UC Irvine should be around plus 120, and UCLA should be nowhere near being the favorite what are they, minus 110 a couple places in the market? So the best value on the board by far is Arizona State. The best team that should win this is UC Irvine.
Go yard all baseball season long with Underdog's Pick'em game. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play now in your state. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be the next one? To play, all you have to do is download the app, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, and you can choose from things like home runs, strikeouts, total bases, and much more. Once your pick feels good, you can lock it in and you can play for as little as $1. If you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. I've been playing any and all hitters facing the Rockies. Guess what? That's allowed, folks. And what's great about Underdog is you can tail or fade anyone you like and take it right to the bank. Download the Underdog app and sign up with the promo code BBOC to unlock a special offer for up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. That's promo code BBOC. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Last week, when we talked about how teams profile, one that was kind of flying under the radar despite playing in the preeminent conference in all of college baseball is Mississippi State. The fact of the matter is, in terms of their home run potential and what their staff brings to the table, ERA, FIP, XFIP, they look better on paper than a Texas team that's been going in the wrong direction for the past month. Now they're placed in that Florida State region in Tallahassee, as well as a potential Cinderella in Northeastern. The Huskies were the only team in America to post a sub-3 staff ERA. All three of their starters had sub-1 whips, and they gave up 11 home runs, those three starters, all season long. So when you talk about the recipe, can you really pitch and can you avoid those big innings? The Huskies have it. So Florida State, this probably is the biggest nightmare for a top team that's hosting, because if Jamie Arnold does not pitch his best and they get into a game where it's tied in the late innings and they have to go to their pen, it could be, an early exit for the Seminoles. Do you agree?
I absolutely 100% agree. This Florida State we have talked about, I even tweeted out hours before this election show, teams I'm looking to sell that are going to be regional hosts. Florida State was one of them. Teams I'm looking to buy that are 2 and 3 seeds. Oh, well, that was Northeastern Mississippi State. And it just turned out that Florida State drew both of them. So if we want to go from a numbers perspective, I think the market caught on to this. I thought this was going to be a place where I could hammer Northeastern. I thought it was a place where I could probably get some value on Mississippi State, but they came out and made Florida State minus 125, about the same price that I make Florida State right here. So I think this is one of those things where you're going to have to wait until you get the pitching matchups. You're going to want to have the most advantageous one for Mississippi State and Northeastern, the winner of that game. You want to see if they hold back their 2 number 1 starters to play Florida State in the second game. And then you're probably going to have to gauge who is the better second starter for those teams in case they do throw their first starters against each other. And I'm talking about Northeastern and Mississippi State. So the winner of Northeastern and Mississippi State, I will absolutely be playing against Florida State. From a series price perspective, the odds makers actually did a really good job here by making Florida State so short, because this was one where I wanted to hammer a dog.
All right, on to Texas, who we've, made a big stink. We've called them a paper tiger. We've said all the nasty things that we can say about the Longhorns. And realistically, Troy Tulowitzki, their hitting coach, he's got to pull a rabbit out of the hat because they got to start hitting again. Otherwise, I think he's got to find a new job down there on the 40 acres, because this was a team that was number 1 in the country, and all of a sudden they look dysfunctional. And here you go again, Collin Wilson, speaking something into existence. You were like, it would be great if we get a UTSA Texas rematch after the Roadrunners beat him in extras 8-7 earlier in the season. Well, lo and behold, we got it. Do you think they're going to bounce UT in this spot?
I feel like we're repeating a podcast we already recorded. I said I want UTSA against Texas in this regional as a 2 seed, and there are reasons why we wanted UTSA. There are reasons why we ended that podcast saying we went 125-1 on the Roadrunners. I had no issues dusting off the old hashtag meep on the Twitter earlier today. It felt so good to get that one out there. Listen, UTSA, they took Texas to extra innings. Got that win. They finished a conference record 23-4, one of the best on-base percentages in the nation. They can absolutely slap the ball and drown you to death. A top 30 road RPI, a 12-6 quad 1, quad 2 record, which means UTSA is going to have a lot of room here to give damage to a Texas team that just really hasn't found an identity since Jared Spencer went down. Ruger Rojas has been a lot of fun to fade, made us a lot of money going up against the Longhorns. UTSA is 13th in the nation in scoring. That is just not a fluke whatsoever, no matter who they face. We've been fading this Texas staff because of their XFIP, which is more than a run and a half, higher than their ERA, and that regression has come in. So I do love UTSA 3-1 in this. I have no hesitation. I don't think there's going to be a hedge against Texas. We're going to let this one ride on UTSA.
Would you agree that UT, in terms of the super regional seeds, is the most likely to flame out in those top 8 teams?
100%. I mean, there are others out there that we've talked about. There are others that are mispriced. There is a difference between mispriced and where I actually believe I'm going to bet an underdog and I'm going to let it ride, and that is UTSA all the way.
Now, talk to me about your Cinderella. I mentioned UC Irvine being mispriced out there in the market. I don't think they technically, qualify as a Cinderella, but certainly if they make it to Omaha as a team that's not hosting, that would be impressive. Do you start with the Anteaters, or are there other teams on your radar?
Yeah, I think the winner of Arizona State UC Irvine would be considered a Cinderella just because they're both going to be underdogs. But if you go away from that, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Creighton 12-1 in the Arkansas Fayetteville regional. Look, do I think that Arkansas is going to go down here? Absolutely not. I think their offense is just head and toes beyond anything that's coming in there, and that includes Kansas. The problem is when you look at Creighton, they actually do have some semblance of a pitching staff. 15th in ERA, 41st in WHIP, fourth in team ERA. I'm sorry, they have a 4-team ERA. Their xFIP is a little bit lower than that, but Creighton, if anybody is in this that I think can make some rumbling, it's more Creighton than it is Kansas. And I think to further elaborate on that, it's really about price. Do I think my Hogs are going to lose? Absolutely not. But this is a regional where I think that they should be priced more around minus 400. I think Zach Root is going to be about minus 1,700 in that first game against Nolan Johnson and North Dakota State. But I think Creighton absolutely has a shot. I make them minus 115 in their first game against Kansas. I will be taking Creighton in the first game against Kansas. And after that, you're sitting around with a 12-1. And you got to try to beat Arkansas twice. Now, I'm not really sure that's going to happen. I'm not really sure you're going to be able to hedge it. But this number should be more closer to Arkansas minus 500, not Arkansas minus 750. So Creighton 12-1. Is it a Cinderella that I think can win? Probably not, but it is an absolute huge long shot that I think has a path. Now, let's just keep this other stuff aside. Yeah, Arkansas has been losing a lot lately. Let's just kind of forget that for the regionals weekend and bring it back up for Tennessee. But things have not been real glorious with this Arkansas bullpen. We have been talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks that we, as in the Razorbacks, that means me, we are only going to go as far as the bullpen is going to lead us. And that bullpen has shown no signs of life over the last month. Can Creighton expose that? I'm not sure. They're 200th in home runs per 9. We'll see which way the wind is blowing in Baum Walker. But 12-1 is an absolutely ridiculous price.
Thoughts and prayers to you, Collin, if they do match up, because the storyline is going to be, they've won 13 of 14. Can they get back to their home diamond in Omaha? There could be a lot of people fading Arkansas, at least emotionally, just for the narrative. And I know you don't need any more of that added pressure to get the Hogs finally to Omaha and have an opportunity to see this pitching staff do their thing on the biggest stage that the sport has to offer. All right, let's transition to your best bets in terms of winning regionals. Let's start with the Clemson Tigers, who are basically going off at even money.
Yeah, I like Clemson. I believe they're in there at plus 115. This is not a number that I make whatsoever. I make Clemson minus 210 to minus 190, and all of their games are lined in. Their pitching is what is the difference here. West Virginia is not a good team whatsoever. They've kind of been exposed inside of Big 12 play, so there's really no threat there. As much as I think Clemson is kind of a dumpster fire, and they showed it. I shouldn't say dumpster fire, but their ACC tournament play, there's just so many mistakes being made out in the field. They didn't get timely hits. Georgia Tech is a better team than them in the ACC. North Carolina is a much better team than them in the ACC, but that doesn't mean that Clemson is dog shit. Clemson should be more like minus 290. They should not be at plus 110, 115, whatever. I would take that all the way up to minus 150 on the Tigers as far as the best bet goes for regionals.
Yeah, when you look at West Virginia, Jack Kartsonis, I hope I'm saying that name right. What a great story to go from John Carroll to Kent State to West Virginia, basically back of their bullpen, to then being elevated in the rotation. But he just doesn't have the experience you would imagine, to be able to get through there. Is that where it starts with, the head-to-head when you look at a potential Nears versus Tigers matchup?
Yeah, that's exactly where you look, and you kind of put those head-to-heads together, and really this is a huge mismatch, and West Virginia has kind of been a paper tiger all year. When you build some of these stats, which they weren't great in the first place, and they essentially played nobody in the quad 1, quad 2 the entire season. They had one of the softest schedules out there. So I think Clemson, I think that experience, I think they are extremely well coached with Bakich. So Clemson all the way here is a best bet. I would also make Oregon as a best bet. We also talked about them already at minus 210. I think that is way too low. This should be minus 290. So Oregon and Clemson, if you want to put those together in a parlay, or if you want to just play them each separately, I think they're both great bets for regionals.
Just to double click into that Oregon regional in Eugene, Utah Valley, Cal Poly, Arizona. You've waxed poetically about why Arizona basically doesn't even deserve to be here. Any fear factor from what, either the lineups or the staffs bring to the table for the Mustangs or the Wolverines?
I think Cal Poly is the team that you would watch. They were a bubble team. They have been playing very well that nobody's been talking about. So if there was a team that I think that could poke their head up here on the Ducks and give them a little trouble, I would probably pay attention to the head-to-head matchup and the pitching projections that I'll be putting out on 3 Straight for Cal Poly and Oregon once it gets to that point.
I won't mention the sports book, but there were a few, actually, more than one, that put out, will any 4 seed make it to Omaha? And the best value I saw out there was plus 1,000, 10 to 1. I mean, that's a hard pass for me. I assume it is for you as well, someone who lives in the actual numbers. What number would it need to be to entice you?
I would take it 18 to 1. I've already kind of priced that out. I'm looking for some of the shortest 4 seeds out there. I think Vanderbilt should be about minus 230 on Wright State in their first game. I mean, remember, Vanderbilt can go really cold on the hitting, and if that happens, they're in trouble. Bethune-Cookman, I don't they're one of the worst teams in the nation, but I don't have a lot of faith in Florida State. I only make Florida State about a minus 275 in that first game. And I don't know what's going on with Cam Tilley's numbers. But if it's not Samuel Dutton and it's Cam Tilley against Central Connecticut State, I only make Auburn about a minus 150 favorite over Central Connecticut State. So there are chances here. But if you put all these numbers together, which I did earlier today, I would need at least an 18 to 1 to say that a 4 seed is going to pull through this. Listen, there are Oral Roberts out there. We've had 4 seeds finally pull it off. But I think that, this year I'm going to stay away from it. I think the books have caught on that people are in love with underdogs, especially 4 seeds. Everyone has that memory of that 4 seed that advanced. So I'm going to stay away from it. 18 to 1 is the number that I'd want.
We've been slowly adding to our portfolio. It's been kind of SEC heavy throughout the season, but for lots of obvious reasons, those are where the best teams are. And some of those numbers, just in terms of the pecking order, if you're the 7th best team in the SEC, you still got a chance to win the national championship once you get to, regionals and super regionals, depending on your draw. Pair it up with the right number, all of a sudden it looks pretty enticing. But you're going outside the SEC to add one more before we kick off this tournament.
Yeah, North Carolina, they're out there 10 to 1 right now. And I think that this is a great path for them. If they win their regional, which they should, they need to avoid the Kyson Witherspoon buzzsaw. If they can do that, or at least survive maybe losing a game to them and coming back, they're going to be fine here. North Carolina absolutely is playing some of the best baseball in the nation. And that includes all the SEC teams that are out there. North Carolina has the pedigree to even play in the SEC right now. They could transfer into the conference and be just fine as a team that is top 5 in staff ERA, staff whip. They have a team ERA of 3.4. Their fielding percentage is 34th. You could kind of call this a Vanderbilt type team, but they can hit. Their homers per 9 right now is 71st, and that's done nothing but increase over the last 2 weeks. And plus, what have we talked about on this podcast? Jake Knapp is the workhorse of this team, but Jason DeCaro is the one that's been on fire over the last 6 weeks. He has been producing, is now up to the number 2 starter on this team. Not only that, I do like their path. Now, the Sooners are the ones that I would look out for, right? If I had a North Carolina ticket to make Omaha, or if I had a futures ticket, I would look really hard if they ran into Kyson Witherspoon in Oklahoma. Other than that, I love the path of them hosting potentially Oregon or a West Coast team out there on the East Coast. That is a lot of travel. And we've seen all year that when these Stanfords and Cowls are playing the Boston colleges of that, it's just some funky shit that happens where the teams just don't identify as who they truly are at home. So I like North Carolina being at home. It looks like besides OU, they could have a clean path, not facing any SEC teams, and get to the College World Series, where potentially, I think this is the thing that's kind of crazy, they would go in there as a 5 seed, and I would actually make them a favorite over the 4 seed, which is Auburn, if Auburn was to make it all the way. So to me, that screams future.
The beauty of working with you is I know that you're in the numbers, you're producing these, models and projections, and when you put something out, the market moves, and that's great. But also on the other side, you're a fan. You're in your bat cave. You got the 5 TV up. You're actually watching the games. It's not just all analytics. So let's put aside the numbers for a minute. And I got 2 questions. First, which team do you think is coming into this with the most pressure on their shoulders? And not the good kind of pressure, not bringing out the best. It's you cannot choke. Maybe you've choked in the past. Maybe it's a manager who needs to get over the bump. Maybe it's a player that needs to show that, I had a down season, but I can turn it all around. My draft stock can go in the right direction with 2 good weeks of baseball. Which team do you think is dealing with the most pressure coming in?
I would never say that Arkansas has pressure, but we haven't been to the College World Series in 3 years. We have built a cathedral of fans and facilities to win the College World Series, and we haven't made it since 2022. It has been embarrassing to let purple teams from the Big 12 come in the Supers and essentially kick our ass. I think there's a lot of pressure on Arkansas, but the good news is most of these kids haven't been on those prior teams, so they may not feel that pressure. But there are a ton of teams out here that are really feeling pressure. Does Tennessee feel pressure? No, they were just in the championship game. They just won the national championship. They don't feel pressure at all. Does LSU? No, they have a championship under their belt. Then there's other teams like Coastal Carolina. Do you feel pressure as an underdog from the Sun Belt Conference? Probably not. But Southern Miss is a program, as a team that is always there, regionals, super regionals, and they just absolutely cannot get over the hump. I think that they are definitely feeling a little bit of that. But Texas, you go out there, Schloss decides to what? Leave TCU. He makes a stop over at Texas A&M. He gets in the championship game. Now he's at Texas. They hold the number one spot here for multiple weeks. They've tailed off. Is there pressure on Texas? I think there absolutely is the chance to choke here, because that entire team is starting to feel pressure, and they just have not played the same in about a month. And with Schloss as your coach, you can see, like, in his interviews, like, he's like, well, we just kind of had a misfortune. Now we've got injuries. Like, there's a lot of excuses here for Schloss in Texas, but I'm sure since it's his first year, he's not really feeling any pressure. Similar to Arkansas, Florida State and their issues with not winning a College World Series are a real problem. There's a lot of pressure on FSU here. I agree with that. I think those are just a few of them where, some of the teams are feeling like a little bit more pressure, and I think it will come into games. Arkansas, Florida State being one of those ones where just from the program and the fan base expectations are that if you don't get to Omaha and you don't get to the championship series, your season is a failure.
The last one, odds agnostic, just looking at the teams that are coming in playing the best baseball right now. And it can be difficult because I mentioned earlier, Creighton's won 13 of 14. Great for the Blue Jays. You're not in a power conference. You're not going through this gauntlet of pitchers on a series by series basis. That being said, which team it could be from an SEC or an ACC or one of these teams from the smaller conferences that got hot, do you just look at right now the way that they're playing? They can win scoring 8 or 9 runs. They can win 2-1. They just seem to win, and you're feeling in your bones confident that they'll pull a rabbit out of their hat here, at least in the regionals.
I don't want to fade Northeastern. I don't want to fade North Carolina. I don't want to fade Auburn's offense. Those are just three that immediately, I know that I didn't plan this question. Those are the three that immediately came off of the top of my head. UTSA is playing right now with all the confidence in the world, especially when you're going to a regional host that you've beaten before and have experience against. UC Irvine is probably really pissed off about where they are. And if they even check the odds market, they're even going to be more pissed off. I think the Anteaters are going to come in with a chip on their shoulder. I think Ole Miss is one of those teams. Hunter Elliott, they've got a great ace there. I think it's great for them to get back to, after winning a national championship a couple of years ago, they feel like they deserve to be there. So I think there's another one where they just have the pedigree as a team to go ahead and make it. But off the top of my head, those are the I would not fade North Carolina. I would not fade Northeastern. And that Auburn offense has just been hitting piss missiles for the last month.
That'll do it for today's episode. Thanks again for joining us and getting fired up for the upcoming NCAA tournament in the college baseball universe. It's all leading to Omaha, but it's got to start with the regionals, and I'm glad that we could walk you through. Special thanks to Collin Wilson for giving us all of his plays, his under-the-hood analytics, and some of his gut plays and emotional elements with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Hopefully we can get the Hogs and Collin to the College World Series this year. And of course, a special thanks to our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. I'm your host, Mike Calabrese. We will return next week to break down even more College World Series. Best of luck with all your bets, and we'll see you here next time at the Big Bets on Campus podcast.